5, 4. Hey, Bobby. So introduce yourself and let's know how long have you been coming to the Med?
My name is Bobby Moore, and I've been coming into the Med since about 1959.
That's pretty close to the beginning. What are some of the things you remember back in the early days?
Not too much. No, I remember sitting with Marty, and we would see certain characters. Probably never knew their names. And it was just Telegraph Avenue back in the 60s, 70s, 80s. And some look like historical figures, who walk by with this kind of thing. And my memory's bad to remember the guy's name, the famous African leader. This one guy looked just like him, and we'd see him cruise by. And just a bunch of different characters, Sometimes you didn't ever get a chance to know who they were, but they'd be coming past, There was an old guy that always looked tired out because he was carrying his attaché case with a raincoat. He never changed and he was dressed very formally. Never knew who he was, but there he goes, he was past, And,
Some interesting conversations you had back then, some of the people? So stories? Any stories you want to say about things you remember?
I'm having problems. I'm getting older. You should have got me a couple years ago. No. Well, just things on the street that happen. When there'd be a woman who used to call the dog lady. And I won't say what she did one time when she had a dog and her dogs in front of the bookstore on Cody's. That was something else. And then she used to when she saw a police car, she'd kind of run over to the police car, and the cops used to want to throw it in reverse. They were always afraid of her just because she created a big, And so she would have a small radio to listen to, and she'd only focus on the radio like this, Didn't know where she was exactly going, but if there was a cop car, she'd just throw herself on the hood. And she'd kind of roll around before she rolled off the hood, and the cops were looking all freaked out because they didn't know they couldn't arrest her. They didn't know what to do with her. They didn't know what to do with her, so that's things like that,
When what year was that, more or less?
70s.
Okay.
70s. And the place was just really communal to everything, It used to be nice to see all the food then go over to Moe's bookstore, and the tray would come back empty. And there was a lot of exchange. More things being done for people, I sort of feel, such as Moe ordering food from here to go over there, stuff like that, And I don't know what else to say on that score. Just watching people go by was fun, and the owners were characters.
What were their names?
Well, let's see, Lino and John.
Okay.
And really, they were real characters themselves, before they opened up this place. But they really were faithful to what they wanted to do. It had a beautiful big blue glass, clear window that had really beautiful writing. It was right over it. And everything was sort of split down the middle in terms of the cafe. It was, on the left-hand side, everything was Viennese. And on the right-hand side, everything was Italian. So you really had a much more interesting at that time choice to make about what you wanted to drink.
Oh.
And how how specially made they were.
So you're talking just about the coffees.
Well, the coffees, just everything else. I mean, the idea was when you came in this place, your nose became used to the fact that you were going to be surprised by what the coffee smelled like, because they were daily, to my knowledge, they were daily roasting the coffee. So when you came in here, you just got excited about what the coffee was going to taste.
Different coffees every day?
I think
Almost
to some
everything?
extent, but I think that, but also the way it was roasted, you know, and in other words, the way it smelled. So I can't say I know how everything works, but every time you came in the morning, you could smell the coffee was a little different, you know. So it was a little bit more of a draw. The place itself had more draw. You know?
So when did you notice it was changing? When did they start?
It's hard to say. The young man who was their son, he had his interest in other things, which is pretty common. And I don't know how much interest he had to retain things such as he did. And this was when Lino was getting older, and I don't think he was, probably his health problems that came with his age. So he wasn't here quite so frequently. But, you know.
So how about the food itself? Did the food also change?
Yes.
So what was the food like when you first started coming?
Well, probably in the middle period, but still about 30 years ago, there was a retired retired Greek couple. You know, they made exclusively. They had a restaurant in downtown Oakland. And then when they retired, they decided to come up here, and they really had good hearts. In fact, she said that she wanted to feed the homeless when they got finished here. But their food was really great, Greek food. And I was able to live in Greece for a while to know what could be nearly akin to what was Greek food, you know. And that's what they did. They made great food. So that was good. I mean, these are all draws to everything. But the big thing that happened then was that the place had its character so well set that before I ever came out here from New York City, I was living in Greenwich Village. And if you asked anybody about Berkeley, the first thing anybody would just tell you is, well, when you go there, be sure you don't lose time. Be sure you go to the Med. And then if you went to the Med, you could leave a message, and somebody would be reached. So the place was also a great message center. And that's where the whole community thing really got going, because if you had any outstanding feelings against what was going on politically, this is the place to come to. Just very naturally the place to be.
How long do you think that lasted? How did that change, would you say?
It lasted a long time. I just think what happened was the financial hardships that all of us had to endure started to eat into us. In other words, it's not likely that you would have been so willing to demonstrate what you believed in, however strongly you felt. Because now, unlike then, you probably couldn't afford to miss a day's work because you had things to worry about, like your rent. Because rents have gone sky high, and the expense of living really kind of takes you out of the action to be in a protest. And we haven't had big protests now for quite a number of years. You know.
We had a little in Occupy. The Occupy protests?
Yeah, except that they were occupied like they were sleeping all the time. I was driving my cab through the Wall Street Occupy thing, and this was I didn't see it. Maybe it happened before I started my shift. But actually, there was no real furor, you know. It was just pretty much, which basically means I didn't see it when I came to work.
So you were here throughout the 60s then, so
yes.
you were here for all the protests, the free speech movement.
And then I only went briefly to Cal, and then I went over to San Francisco State. It was kind of nice to get away from all the protests over there, and boom, smack right into it, you know, 68, 69. And that's when they arrested people like mad, you know.
Were you here for the free speech movement?
Yeah, yes.
Was Mario Savio here?
He was a friend of mine. Yeah.
Oh, right. What do you remember from that time?
I really loved my first wife. We were still always close, but we separated and got a divorce. And it was very painful to each of us. And this would be my eldest two daughters. And so I remember that I had got a lot of anxiety to the extent that I'd go to these really great classes at San Francisco State in the English department. They had great teachers, but I couldn't get on the bridge. I just started getting too much anxiety. And so I remember a friend of mine who was a roommate of mine who went ahead and got his doctorate in psychology. He said, "Hey, Bobby, this is a book you got to read if you're feeling these kind of nervous symptoms. This is really good. He gets a lousy title. It's a woman's name. I would almost remember her name. It's been too many years. And he said, but the name of the book was called Hope and Health for Your Nerves. I said, ooh. Well, I knew that Mario at that time was working about maybe 6-7 months at Cody's bookstore. So I went over to Mario and I said, hey Mario, do you think you can help me with this book? I'm looking for it, but I can't find it. And I don't want to really ask anybody else. So he just did this thing. And he looked at it and he goes off. And I knew he didn't do it right because, you know, you've got books galore. He goes over to something that's the nearest thing. He grabs it, comes right back and goes like this, you know. I says, here, Bobby, read this instead. And the book says, be glad you're neurotic. So now I'm really mad, you know. So I look around for a tone, you know. I want to have something to really lay on. So I found this kind of a book that was studying demagoguery from so-and-so to so-and-so. But I don't remember that more than that. And I laid it on him. Well, it wasn't so many years before my first wife passed away. Really a lovely woman and a great mother. So, and she really was very, very fond of Mario. We both used to do babysitting a little bit. She did. I was working too much, but she babysat the 2 children. And so what happened was, there was a book that was on that bookshelf and you sell things easily. I forget the expression. And it was a book on a biography on Mario Savio. And I read it, and son of a crap. You know what he did? I read in his own life story that he was going through the same experience that I was. He was going through a lot of nervous anxiety. He was breaking up with his partner at the same time. His kids were going to be affected similarly. And he did that to me. And I was like, that's like that, right? And I brought the book to Becky to read, and she said, oh, Bobby, you know what a great guy was. You can't let stuff like that bother you. And I felt like that big. So I no, he was a good guy.
Yeah. Going back to the free speech movement, though, were you part of the discussions on?
No, I wasn't going to school at that time. Mostly I was working before I was going to get to school full time.
Well, how about some of the other protests and activism that happened here? Were you?
Well, for me, it's sort of like a storytelling thing a little bit. I used to drive it. I'm still driving a cab. 52 years with yellow cab. And I remember one time it was morning shift, and a graveyard the morning shift, and 513 was the number 1 stand downtown. This was for yellow cab, or for any cab, I guess. And it must have been like 5:30 in the morning. The sun might have been coming up or had just come up. And all of a sudden I smelled tear gas before I heard any explosion. And I looked around and all these tear gas canisters were flying. And I didn't think anybody was even out of bed yet. And all kinds of people, I don't know how many, they came as a wave and they actually jumped onto the taxi to get on the car. They walked across the hood and ran off the other side to get away from the cops. You know, so there was that. A lot of things would happen, boom, you know. And you had to be worried about your kids if you were sitting with your kids in an outdoor cafe, because I was next door to the cafe that was created because they wanted to be able to have a business like the Med, you know. And I forget what its name was. It was very classic, had marble to everything, marble floors. But I was sitting out front there with my kids who were small then, and boy, the cops came and everybody came, and boy, they came. You know, you had to make it out here real fast. You know?
Was that anti-war protests, or?
Yeah, it was one of the anti-war protests. It might have been the one about People's Park where somebody was shot. On the roof.
Were you around when the People's Park protests happened?
Oh, sure.
They took the park. You remember some of that?
That was the result of it. Yeah, I was there for that. But I just remember other things that happened. Another time I think I was on the same stand, 513, and some soldiers woke me up, and they had a young dog, you know, and they told me take us to the secret place up in Tilden where we had a secret base, you know, in case we were attacked, you know. And I don't know how to describe it better than that. I had to drive around all day long. I never did find a place. You know what I mean? So there was a lot of activity back there. The activities just sagged off completely.
Well, let's talk about how it related to the Med, because supposedly some of the protests and demonstrations were planned here at the Med.
I think just about anything that was going to be planned, as people were speaking about this, the other thing was going to take its place here a little bit. And that's where my friend, I wish he was here, Marty, because he was a steady person at the Med. I was sort of coming for a while, and then I'd go to do something I had to do.
Well, we'll catch him later. Maybe he'll tell us some more about
I
that.
hope he comes back,
Yeah, because supposedly all kinds of different groups did some of their meetings and planning here.
And some of the things too, you know, there was a guy that I think and my information isn't entirely correct, so but there was one guy that shot, maybe wounded him, and he brought his car up here somewhere, and then he was running around here, and then the Berkeley cops were after him. And it was early in the morning, and I think almost all together, my favorite guy behind the counter was working that day. And I wasn't here, but I knew what happened. They shot the cop right at the door. I mean, they shot the guy that was the suspect right at the door.
Oh.
And did him in. So
right in the door of the Med?
Right in the doorway, yeah. You know, and I mean, in other words, there were things going on. There were things that were going. And I think it's probably all the fact that stuff is really, like in New York City, they would focus on what was going on in Berkeley, and the Med would keep coming up. Somebody was here at the Med, somebody was here at the Med, and that's kind of the way it went. People come and go like that. And like I say, other friends of mine knew people who would come in somewhat regularly. You know, the guy who did cartoons, I just go blank on somebody's names. Graphic comics kind of a guy, is famous.
Crumb?
Yeah.
Robert Crumb.
Robert Crumb. He came in here.
Yeah. There's some information that in the 1980s, a bunch of literary people, Crumb and Gary Snyder, Ishmael Reed.
Yes, yeah. I never caught him. You know, I guess I must have been either working or, taking care of the kids or whatever. You know. For me, it was mostly coming in and hanging out with somebody that you'd see, which was always the nicest thing about it. But then as the years passed, there have been so many, now it's a generational change, almost twice, where there are people that I just regularly come in and say hi to, and now they've gone away. We've had dear people who were here for years, and I always wanted this to be the case, that we would have our own photographs, a memorial to our dear friends that are gone, you know. There was a guy by the name of Mel, who was a dear friend to everybody. And when I saw Mel, we both went for the same table. The best table was the lower round table right by the staircase. It was over there. And because he had a lot of stuff he wore, like TV, like just little things like that, you know. And he was just a sweet guy. My daughter was now going to be near 30. She was little then. And this guy and he was kind of making his life just as we're all trying to get by. And if he came back from the A's game, he loved the A's. He'd always have some new button, and you could see he really went for it. But he would always give it to her, put it on her clothes. It's good, sweet people.
It was Mel.
It was Mel. Yeah.
And he was here for a long time.
Quite a while, yeah. And he passed away at a young age. You know, he had diabetes. You know, and there's other people like that. They got some.
You remember some of the others, especially their names, who were regular?
It's kind of first name type thing. There was another guy called Fred. And they were kind of dashing characters. They had their own little kind of character. And he was really, really sweet to my daughter, Caitlin. And he just came after her with all kinds of loving sweetness. And he liked to be called Fred from the Med, or Fred in the Med.
That's good.
And he was kind of a dashing character. And I remember another thing about sitting next to Marty was, here he is, he's a retired professor, you know, in Near Eastern Studies and all that. But on the side, I think he's very naturally creative as a cartoonist. He does very good, quick cartoons of everybody.
Oh, okay.
And so one time, just in a hurry, who was going by? But Fred. So he had him going past, like something maybe by one of the futurists like Boccioni did. People who were looked like they were there's a little ram that coming from them. They're going by so fast, everything's, and he would sort of this guy Fred going past, kind of blissed right by. So I think we're sort of a collection of people who really know, and we didn't have table stuff upstairs. I mean, everybody came here to see each other.
What was upstairs?
Well, using your computers to get online, you know. You know what I mean? I mean, that's a different thing, you know.
Right.
Back then, we were all kind of assembled, you know, and you could hear other people's conversation, you know. And people would get up to come over and argue with them, or whatever it was, but friendly though, you know. So there was a much greater interaction. And you got help, and it still happens with the people like Lois, I think, in the afternoon with her friends. They still do. There's still much, you know. They've continued it. Really helpful. Everybody gets something from what they've heard, you know, and that's the real thing. That's really what it's all about. And I didn't know of any other place that was like the Met in that regard. I think that was the whole thing about it. So everybody had something to offer somebody else, and that's why you came back.
Yeah, even now, this is pretty unique, right?
It is. It hasn't gone away. There's still some folks around. You know what I mean? And you couldn't even go to any other place because you know it's just going to be some kind of a standoff, you know. But you came here, and because if you had a good job, you'd have that same kind of response from your co-workers. It's sort of like that. And there were good feelings, warm feelings. And also my second wife, my ex-wife, this is before we had cell phones and all that stuff, and if I was gone, she wouldn't bother to try to reach me. She'd just call up the Met and ask if Bobby was there. Yeah, he's here. I'd come over and answer the phone. It's kind of a nice small place.
So besides discussions and such, I understand that, at least in more recent years, there's been kind of programs. They have music, live music, or poetry. Now, was that going on in the early days?
I think so, but maybe not so. So that Craig gets a lot of. Who's the owner? He gets a lot of credit for that, you know. And I like the way he had like the tango. It used to be on Saturday nights. I think it got switched to something else, but that was really lovely. We never had that here before, and I like that because it felt like we were getting people, not just students, but you had a mix of everyone.
Right.
And I felt like I almost felt like we were like maybe in Paris a little bit. You know what I mean? A little bit of a Parisian culture. And that was enjoyable.
So certainly the tango is fairly recent, but just live musicians or poetry, that really wasn't happening as much in the early days.
No, it wasn't. Not to my knowledge. See, that's the whole thing, because I've been working nights for years, so I missed out on a lot of that kind of stuff. But I don't think so. Maybe a little bit here. Again, Craig was the best in my experience for that. And were you here at the time that he had these musicians that were from Mongolia? I guess they were from Mongolia.
No,
and boy, were they outstanding! And of course, they already made it. They were outstanding. Yeah. And apparently, Craig had they were friends together. So one time he had them come and perform here, and they had CDs afterwards. Wow, they were something else. That was the best musical experience I've ever had here, and it was all Craig who brought that about.
Yeah, these. I guess some of that's in the more recent days.
Yes.
Last 5 or 6 years or something.
Yeah.
Well, what else? We've kind of covered a lot of ground here. There's stuff about the Med. We should get Paul back.
Okay.
We'll try to do a little wrap up. Well, just want to say a little bit.
When you're completely done with him, I'll shoot B-roll of the entire facility.
Okay.
Then I can cut in over his.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll do that. So, I guess maybe the last thing to talk about is the physical changes that. Like we were just talking earlier about, you said the floor or something?
It doesn't get me as badly as it gets. I think I've actually gotten a little bit more used to it, but I know exactly how he feels and how he felt.
So what was it before?
just kind of a gray, brownish,
Solid.
solid color, and it just didn't interfere to everything else. See, the thing that it looks too much like a kind of a corny cafe with a pattern shape to it. A little too much of an old ice cream.
Checkerboard.
Something like that. It was a little bit. If you take that away, if you go like that and you sort of block it off, it sort of makes everything else sort of become. I don't know. That's how I feel. But. There are funny things that happen all the time here. I remember when people started becoming aware of the fact that smoking, to be exposed to other people smoking, wasn't good for you.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah. Well, so what did they do? Start with the change of. It used to be that people would come here and smoke, and
Yes.
this way it was.
And after a while, you began to feel it, however that was. So what happened was Lino, and I think John might not have been around at that point anymore, but Lino decided we had to do something about it. So they put like a black or a silver tape that ran directly from the wooden case, and it came right by the pole, which in the old days was a beautiful, beautiful antique gold. It wasn't painted over black, but antique gold was part of everything. And it crossed that, and it came that way, and it came across to the wall over here.
Right on the floor.
On the floor.
Line.
And if you were a smoker, you were supposed to, go to your area, And where do you think the area was for the smoker? In the front, of course. The door was open, so everybody who was a non-smoker had a
Kind of trapped, huh?
Yeah. It's almost like if there was a swimming pool, how some people go do something in the swimming pool.
Yeah.
So you have to get one end to the other, and you put a line across. I don't think anything's going to change.
I guess they could go upstairs.
We can go upstairs.
Yeah, that's further. So how long did that last, where they had the two sections?
Maybe a year or two or so.
Oh.
It just kind of progressed with what was going on. And it was kind of family-like when they had chairs out front, because I remember Mo was in his last years before he passed away. And he used to like to come downstairs from the fourth floor, where he used to like to be alone, besides the register. And he used to sit out front at a table. And it was just nice to come into Berkeley or come on Telegraph Fame, and there's Mo sitting at the desk.
Right.
So it was a little bit more homey.
You don't recall when they took those away?
When they took the tape off the floor, you mean, or the chairs away?
Yeah.
I think it was out there for a while, and I don't know how it left. They still might put it out from time to time now, but I'm not sure.
Oh.
I'm just not sure.
All right. Well, I haven't seen it.
Yeah. Well, it's been a cold
Yeah.
wind this summer, But that's kind of
Anything else about the piano? Was the piano always here?
No, we didn't have a piano.
When they bring that in?
It was nice in one way. It was nice to have a piano not there, because I don't know, it sort of made us all kind of be inclusive. But that's just. But another thing is when somebody plays it really well, then.
Was that Craig's doing, or was it before Craig?
It might have happened something or other, but only for a brief period. But Craig, to my knowledge, he wanted it there, which was kind of nice. It made a kind of a communal thing. There was quite a bit of playing there. It was nice, And it was just a real homey place, And it exists in other places, but it just doesn't quite. It's not quite the same, And we quieted down a lot. That's for sure. But I think basically there are people who would have been conspiracy-minded, negatively speaking. They didn't like people conspiracy-minded, so there was a lot of bad attention that the Met got for that. In other words, if you said to somebody some years back that you like the Met, it's like your home, you like the different, they look very, oh yeah, so you don't like what do you call it, huh? You're anti this, you're anti that, And some people didn't even like Berkeley.
Well, yeah.
But I mean, we have that. But locally, it still responded a little bit if you said you went to the Met, because things were being worked on. Things that was good, regardless of whatever didn't come out of it or did come out of it. It was nice to be able to have and even have an argument. So this community, it really was.
Yeah. We still have some of that now.
We do.
Right.
No, we haven't lost it yet.
But other cafes in Berkeley, at least the ones I've gone to, they don't have any of that.
There's nothing there, and it's sad, And there are other places that have their own nice setting too. but it just doesn't seem to accommodate. I don't know why that is. Just one of those things.
Well, we're gonna miss it.
You got it. I'd love to be here with Marty for a while. To hear what Marty's got to say.
Yeah.
I think he went with his wife somewhere this weekend.
He's here so often that I was thinking, oh, maybe he'll just be here. But
I'll try to get him.
we'll catch him. We got a few more days.
He just has, because of his connection to the university, there are people who are coming here just regular. He sort of had a regular thing with people, and I didn't have that. I was, hitting one style.
Apparently, Ed's been coming here quite a while. Monroe.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. So, but he said he wasn't ready to be interviewed tonight.
Okay.
He said he wanted to think
It's a
about
little
it.
hard because it's mostly all of us here. If we weren't connected to the university at the time, I mean, for me, it was too brief to be there. Although I've been at Berkeley for years and years, so there's you don't go right off to connect to somebody who you know you're going to see the following day. That didn't happen for me, so I was always just meeting somebody. So, which is great. But you don't get so easily connected at the same time. And I'm looking around, I see a lot of old faces.
Well, who else has been here for a while?
Well, the gentleman from Spain has been coming here for quite a while.
Like how long? You say?
Well, somewhere between 5 and 10 years, I think.
Oh. Well.
Nothing goes far back enough. I have to be here earlier in the day.
Yeah, well, I mean, Ed says he's been coming here since the 70s.
And we never met each other for whatever reason. A little bit, because he was doing something like art or doing whatever he was doing. And you didn't want to disturb the person. And he's big. And I would have said I could spot 2 people at the end, but I can't see that far anymore. So, Josh's been here for a while too.
Yeah, he's funny. He said he didn't want to be interviewed.
I was nervous to the extent that I wish I could have had a long-term thing, certain people to talk about. But mine, were long enough, but you didn't know when you see them the next time, so.
Oh, yeah. Right.
And other people were surprised that he didn't come in here. I had a lot of people, like Mario Savia would rarely ever come in here. You almost never saw him in here. And I've had other people who were well known for what they do, and they might have come in here 1 or 2 times, but they didn't come in. I don't know why that would be exactly the case, but it was.
Maybe they weren't interested in having conversations.
Maybe they're busy, too busy,
Yeah.
whatever it was too. And that's true. The conversation could sort of move on. But actually, the conversations here were always good conversations in a lasting sense of the word. Where if I can remember anybody talking at other tables and other places, it just fell off. It wasn't sustained by something. And this place had a lot of feeling. I mean, if you're in New York City, you're down the village, and someone tells you about it, the first thing you do when you go to Berkeley, be sure you go to the Med. Right?
We got it.
Yeah.
All right, well,
That's it?
Paul's going to go around and film, just the scenery. So
Sure.
Oh,
okay.
Okay, all done.
Yeah.
I want to thank you. Can we get your address so we can send your check to you?
Yeah. Oh, check send what?
So we can send the check to you.
A check for what?
Worth attributing about $2,000 per interview.
You almost had, I would have ruined that. I would have been crying on your clothes. And when I stain people's clothes, the stains. The Irish have a way of staining. We've had a long career.
In lieu of the $2,000, thanks a lot.
I hope I did all right.
You did all right.
I wanted Marty to help me, Scott.